Welcome back to the Myrna Method live stream. I'm registered dietitian Myrna Haag, and my goal is to bring you impactful nutrition information that can make a significant difference in your life. Because sometimes just little adjustments in your diet go a long way. But what's really incredible is that most people, they eat all day, right? That's what we do. And we don't even know what it is we're eating or how it affects us. And I think that's why we get trapped into a lot of eating patterns that are not in the best interest of our health, even when we think they are. So in this live stream, what I try to do is bring you science, nutrition that can be impactful and also things that you can implement easily into your world of food. What we're going to talk about in this video is fiber. And I really consider fiber a magic bullet in so many ways. And people do not understand exactly what fiber does, how important it is to your overall health. Everybody's like, oh, well, just fiber's healthy. Well, it's really interesting to understand all the functions that fiber does. And why do I say that? Because we don't give it enough credit. And quite honestly, bringing the right fibers in your diet I say because there's all different types of fibers, but fiber in itself is one of the top major preventions for disease. So let's get started, Samantha, and let's show everybody how fiber is the real hero of weight loss and health. So when we really think about diet, it's about understanding the 4 major macronutrients: protein, fiber, carbs, and fat. That's it, folks. That's everything you put in your mouth is going to have those 4 macronutrients. And it's super important to understand how those 4 macronutrients work for the end of the day, like when you're done for the day and you're like, did I get enough protein, fiber, carbs, fat, and how those macronutrients work in meals themselves. So what we're going to talk about in this video is the importance of fiber. So fiber is a type of carbohydrate. It's actually found in carbohydrates. You don't digest it. It's an essential part of your health, and I'm going to explain to you how that is in this video, all the different things that fiber does. There's 2 main types of fiber, soluble and insoluble, and we'll talk about those types of fibers and what they do. And how much do you need? Anywhere from 40 to 70 grams. Now, for most of my patients, I like to have a minimum of 35 grams. Now, the CDC, they like you to have anywhere from 25 to 28 grams is a minimum. I like a little more than that because when you really go through the science of fiber, you will see having less is not better. Now, with fiber, if you're not used to eating a lot of fiber and then you watch this video and then you decide to really load up on it, can be a big problem. Because if you don't have all the bacteria, all the enzymes from eating fiber, in other words, the more fiber you eat, the better you get at eating it, because the body provides some of these digestive enzymes in the fermentation process from actually eating the food. So a lot of times IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, where people will get bloated and have a lot of issues with fiber, can be because they're just not used to eating it. And it can take several months to get your gut to build up to that. And then some people just don't tolerate a lot of different types of fibers. But what I find in my practice is we don't want to go through an elimination of some of these fibers because you're not good at eating them. We want to figure out how to bring in those digestive enzymes to help us break them down. Because I think what you're going to find out at the end of this video, how doggone important these fibers are and how they can really make a difference in your health. So what are fiber foods? Fiber foods are coming from plants, period. You're not going to find fiber in animal foods. So you're not going to find it in chicken and yogurt. Now, I know there can be some products out there, like I've seen some yogurts that actually have fiber in them, but they are putting them in there. That is a manufacturer process. It is not naturally found in animal foods. So fibers are going to be found in all your plant foods. It's the part of the plant that we don't break down and actually stays in the intestinal tract, becomes fermented, goes through a process, a chemical process, and it's this chemical process that really creates all these chemicals that do great things for us. So when we look at fiber, we're looking at these chemicals that it creates, and there's different chemicals I'm going to talk about in this video, and also the different types, the soluble and insoluble. And I think that is an incorrect spelling. That should be IN. But anyways, we'll fix it later. And also the science and function. We're going to talk about the science and function of the fiber, how it builds good bacteria, it controls the appetite, and I'm going to show you chemically in the brain how it does that. It cleans the colon and actually removes bad cholesterols. It also creates chemicals called short-chain fatty acids. So fiber creates the chemicals in the gut, which are good bacteria and short-chain fatty acids. Now, a low-fiber diet actually creates to a poor gut balance, poor digestion, less short-chain fatty acids, less good bacteria, so now you're going to get the bad bacteria, and this can manipulate your appetite to eat more. So when you have less short-chain fatty acids and you have more bad bacteria, you actually trigger your brain, the hypothalamus, appetite center in your brain, to want to have more food. So let's go into it and see all the chemicals that do this and how we can eat a certain diet to reduce our appetite. So the fiber science and function, one more time, in summary, decreases bad cholesterols, controls the appetite, creates good bacteria, which, by the way, these good bacteria travel to other areas of the body and do other really health benefit functions, create short-chain fatty acids, which also leave the gut and circulate through the body and have a lot of health functions for the positive. And it also cleans the colon, primarily some of these bad cholesterols, but it also cleans toxins from the colon. So when we're looking at fiber, a lot of times we can just look at a food label. So if you look at under the carbohydrates, that's typically where you're going to find it. You're going to see the number of grams of carbs in that particular food. As I said, on minimum, we want 35 grams. That's the Myrna method. Now, CDC, Center for Disease Control, they're going to tell you at least 25 grams. So when we're looking at fiber, we want to try to make sure that we get enough fiber for the day. Like I said, if you're only eating a diet that has 8 grams of fiber, you can't jump from 8 grams to 25 grams. Well, some people can, but you may have a little bloating and digestion issues. It might take you a little more than a week or a day, possibly a month, maybe 2 months, to build the gut up to handle the fibers. So the two chemicals that are created from fiber that I'm going to talk about is short-chain fatty acids and good bacteria. So the good bacteria, what their main job is to create gut balance. So the gut tries to create a good balance of good bacteria to bad bacteria. So you're always going to have bad bacteria in the gut. It's just part of the gut doing its gut thing. But if those bad gut bacteria are allowed to grow and outnumber the good, we're going to have a big problem because they can also travel and circulate to other parts of the body and actually cause disease. I'm not going to get into that particular issue in this video because that could be another podcast in itself. These good bacteria, which are the ones I'm going to talk about from eating fiber, they can travel to parts of the body and actually induce a benefit, health benefit. And also, other chemicals that are made are short-chain fatty acids, which ironically are made from good bacteria. So bacteria helps in themselves create a good gut balance. Good bacteria can travel to other areas of the body and produce a positive health effect. And also these good bacteria can create chemicals called short-chain fatty acid And also, too, these good bacteria can help synthesize serotonin. Just a little another detail. And serotonin is a chemical neurotransmitter that's 95% of our serotonin is made in our gut, but it is one of those neurotransmitters that the brain uses to induce a good, happy mood. Okay, so serotonin can also cause some appetite fluctuations, and all of this is made in the gut. And the key is fiber helps keep that gut healthy. So you can start to see now that fiber is pretty important for maintaining your health. And in this study, it talks about the role of short chain fatty acids from gut microbiota, that's a gut microbiome, that's the bacteria in the gut, and this gut-brain connection. So these bacterias and these short chain fatty acids, they can travel to the brain. And they can also travel to other areas of the body. They don't just staying in the gut, they are moving around. And this study talks about how short chain fatty acids increase brown fat. Now, brown fat is the good fat. We want more of the brown fat, less of the yellow fat. So the brown fat is actually increased. It's a good thing with the short chain fatty acids. It regulates the mitochondria function. The mitochondria are the cell's powerhouse. So in the mitochondria is where most of our metabolism is made. It's where our body uses fuel for food. So this is super important for your metabolism to be healthy, which also has to do with weight regulation. This is related to these short chain fatty acids. It also increases insulin secretion, these short chain fatty acids. It regulates the immune function, and as I'd mentioned before, in the synthesis of serotonin. And if we look in this study, you can look in the yellow top highlighted area. It talks about short chain fatty acids interaction with their receptors in these cells, and it promotes signaling in the brain. They also circulate throughout the body. They increase the secretion of gut hormones, which we're going to talk about, called glucagon-like peptides. So these short-chain fatty acids, these fibers that are fermented in the gut that are creating these good chemicals, because I want to keep going back to the source, which is the fiber. They also create gut hormones called GLPs, and you might have heard these before because this is the big rage with a lot of these Ozempic drugs, these drugs people are taking that are supposed to help regulate the appetite. Well, the gut does this naturally for us, and fiber is one of those foods, believe it or not, just like the 2,000 pop you're doing to spend on these drugs to control the appetite. Fiber is one of the macronutrients that does it naturally. And it also reaches in circulation. It can help, as you can see in the green, it helps with the brown adipose tissue, fat tissue, which is a health benefit, regulates the liver mitochondria, increases insulin, and it also helps with a whole body energy homeogenesis. So it helps also with this balance in the body, creating and maintaining a homeostasis for a healthy balance, these short chain fatty acids. And also, if you look at the highlight in green at the bottom of this study, it says contributing to the biosynthesis of serotonin, improving neuronal homeostasis and function, neuronal meaning those cells in the brain. And together, the interaction of the short-chain fatty acids with the gut-brain pathways can directly or indirectly affect emotion, cognition, and anything that has to do with the pathology of any type of brain disorders, which to me is kind of fascinating because in some of the other studies, I'm not going to get in with this video, I do talk about how some of the gut bacteria and some of these bacteria that show up with a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. We're seeing it even with dementia and Alzheimer's, that we're seeing a relationship with the gut and disease, not only in a good way, but in a bad way as well. Like I said, the bacteria, the good ones and the bad ones, they get around. So we want to make sure that we keep more of the good ones and we're not doing anything to create the bad guys. The other thing that I think is really fascinating about short-chain fatty acids, it's an anti-aging benefit. Because these short-chain fatty acids, if you read the highlighted in this study, the role of short-chain fatty acids in health and disease, if you read the highlighted at the top, it says the abundance of evidence to show the short-chain fatty acids play an important role in the maintenance of health and development of disease. These short-chain fatty acids are a subset of fatty acids, which, by the way, they're not really fats. They're really short in their chain length, but they do not act like fats. I just kind of want to mention that. But they produce this gut microbiota in this fermentation process. These are the fibers you're eating. But what this study really talks about, if you look at the second highlighted area, that they actually have identified this in the inhibition of this histone deacetylases. And what are those? These are the little enzymes that attach to our chromosomes and unravel them. So as you age, your chromosomes actually get shorter. That's part of the aging process, and we don't want that to happen. It's like an unraveling process that happens with certain enzymes, and these short-chain fatty acids inhibit that. They actually block these enzymes from unraveling our chromosomes and contributing to aging. So that to me is fascinating because it says, wow, fiber, eating a balanced diet of fiber can actually be an anti-aging benefit. Wow. And it also helps with inflammatory. We're going to talk about that next, how these short-chain fatty acids are involved in the immune system. If we look at this study, it says at the top, regulation of short-chain fatty acids in the immune system. Short-chain fatty acids produced by gut bacteria play a critical role in regulating the function of immune cells, primarily by influencing their development, activation, inflammatory response, with the ability to promote anti-inflammatory effects and maintain immune balance within the body. So how this happens is these immune cells actually have little receptor sites on them, like so many other cells in our body have receptor sites, and they're just waiting for the right compounds to sit on those receptor sites and do their magic. Well, immune cells are no different. They have receptor sites specific for these short-chain fatty acids. Now, you may not be getting enough short-chain fatty acids. Maybe you're not eating a diet that's rich in fiber. Maybe you just don't even know you should be doing this. But immune cells are hoping you do. Because when those short-chain fatty acids sit on those immune cell receptor sites, they create super immune cells. What I mean by that, they increase the immune cells' property in doing what immune cells do. So they actually help increase our immune system. And if you look at this study, it talks about, in the highlighted area, a growing body of research suggests that short-chain fatty acid metabolites produced by the intestinal bacteria that are fermented through the fibers play a critical role in the health of these short-chain fatty acids as they act on a variety of cell types to regulate important biological processes, including a lot of host metabolism, that's with the mitochondrial, intestinal function, yes, creating a balance in the gut, and immune function. Short-chain fatty acids affect the function and fate of immune cells. This finding provides a new concept in immune metabolism and a better understanding of the regulatory role of short-chain fatty acids in the immune system, which obviously we all know impacts the prevention and treatment of disease. So I'm giving a lot of heavy weight here on these fibers because they deserve it. So when we talk about fiber, we're going to now talk about the different fiber types. So fiber is broken down into two types, soluble and insoluble. And every time you see fiber on a food label, it's going to be a certain percentage of solubles and a certain percentage of insolubles. It's usually a 50-50 deal. Now, what's the significant difference between the two types of fibers? Soluble fiber forms a gooey sludge. So this is what you're going to see in Metamucil, right? You're going to see it in some Facilum husk. These are soluble because they break down and they form this little gooey paste. And in this gooey paste is where these cholesterols get trapped and they just can't seem to escape that web, that gooey web, and then you eliminate them. Okay, because that's what fiber does. It does not go through to the bloodstream. Fiber gets eliminated in the feces. So, what's the benefit? As some of these toxins in your gut are involved in this webbed up gooey substance, it actually helps become a colon cleanser, actually detoxifying. And when you have a system in your gut that's cleaner, you're going to digest better. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better because you just don't have good absorption of nutrients when you have poor digestion, you're constipated, or you have diarrhea, which means you've got some major gut issues. Soluble fiber, believe it or not, can help with both of those, not only diarrhea, but also with constipation. But one of the benefits, I think, with soluble fibers is how it can help in cardiovascular disease because it can actually lower some of these LDL, some of these bad cholesterols, some of these atherogenic cholesterols that create plaque in the artery. Insoluble fibers do not break down in the same way. They are considered roughage. And I always think of them as the big scrub brush because they pretty much go through the intestinal tract and they just clean up the walls. They just literally scrape it down. So it's really what we call roughage. And most fiber foods are going to have a percentage of both. Plant foods. Now, some of your fiber supplements are going to be primarily the soluble fibers. The soluble fibers are, both of them create good bacteria, but the soluble fibers probably carry a little heavier responsibility or a heavier load in doing that. So let's go through and talk about some of these soluble fibers and insoluble fibers. Where do we get them? So some of the soluble fibers, which, by the way, a lot of food manufacturers use them as thickening agents. I thought I'd mention that. So sometimes you will see them in processed food because, as I said, they are little thickeners because they do it in your gut and they also do it with food. So soluble fibers are called prebiotics because prebiotics, when they get in the gut, they ferment and they form probiotics. What are probiotics? They're good bacteria. Now, everybody's so used to just taking a supplement of probiotics, which is fine. It's usually maybe 15 strains that actually make it through the gut acid. Well, I should say stomach acid. So the hydrochloric acid will pretty much destroy most of the gut bacteria because you have a lot of species, thousands of them. So it's not just the 15 you're getting at the store. Those are the hardy ones that can make it through the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Your body makes bacteria in the gut in an alkaline environment. So that's why there's nothing that's going to really replace a healthy probiotic gut than actually eating the fibers that will make it. Some of your soluble fibers, and I'm just going to mention them here because some of them you will actually see in some foods. Wheat dextrin, agum, gargum, Facilum husk, inulin. And by the way, some of these, I know inulin, chicory root, can cause bloating for a lot of people because these manufacturers put an excessive amount in some of these foods because they're trying to show they have a lot of fiber. Normally foods that wouldn't have fiber. But for some people, they don't seem to have an effect at all. So some of the ones that we're looking at that are fibers that you will see a supplement, and I think sun fiber is one of the ones that my patients like the best because it's flavorless. It doesn't seem to form as much. It's just easier on the palate as well than some of the other ones like psyllium husk. But if you look at the label, and I want you to look at the label, for one scoop, which is I think 2 tablespoons, or it's a tablespoon and a half. It's a little teeny scooper. It has 15 calories, which we're not going to look at that, which doesn't really matter. And it has 6 grams of dietary fiber. And it's coming in the form of guar gum. So that's the fiber they're using here. And it's actually 7 grams. That's interesting because it says 6 dietary fiber, 7. So this is a soluble fiber. So this is going to go in the gut, create that sludge. Another one, and I just am showing you some of these because this is what, you're going to see out there on the internet. You want to go to that label, look at that label, and you can see right there, this one has 6 grams of soluble fiber. If you look at and this again is a guar gum, okay? And if we look at some of the others, I know Benefiber is another one. I think this is a wheat dextrin one. Yeah, wheat dextrin. And this has, they show you that it has soluble fiber. It's only 2 grams. And total dietary fiber, that might be some insoluble. And that is for 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon. So yeah, so if you did a tablespoon of that, then it's going to be 6 grams of dietary fiber, very similar to the other. But it includes also both soluble and insoluble. And if you go to actually, look at that label. That's kind of confusing. I think it's total dietary fiber there, and this label's not like how they should be doing it, but it's probably all soluble fiber, and the only reason I say that is because as a dietitian, I'm looking at the calories and looking at it here. So let's go to the next one. And we can see in this psyllium husk, you have soluble fiber at 6 grams and insoluble at 1 gram. So these are all examples. And when we look at oatmeal, because I want to give you real food, right? A lot of foods do not give us the breakdown, but in this particular one, it does. And it shows dietary fiber total at 4 grams and the soluble fiber at 2 grams. Now, this one really boasts oatmeal because they're trying to get people to eat it as a heart-healthy food. And right on the label for the oatmeal, it says right there, as part of a heart-healthy diet, the soluble fiber in oatmeal can help reduce cholesterol. So for a half a cup of fiber, or a half a cup of oatmeal, you're getting 2 grams of soluble fiber. Now, I always have to laugh because things will say, oh, this is a great source of fiber, or this is really high in fiber. Okay, use your brains here, because think about it. If you need 25 grams of fiber a day for a healthy gut, and this has a total of 4, I'm saying it's fiber, it's a good source, but I mean, it's not like a super rich source, right? You know you're going to need a lot more for the day. So sometimes the labels can be a little misleading. But let's look at some science, because the next question should be, well, how much soluble fiber do I need to really reduce cholesterol? Good question. Here's the answer. Approximately, according to studies, 5 to 6 grams of soluble fiber is enough to lower some of these bad cholesterols. But the best recommendation would be 6 to 7 grams. So in looking at some clinical trials where we can see in this clinical trial that it can reduce cholesterol as much as 20% in some people if we have these grams of soluble fibers. Well, in this one, it says up to 10 to 20 grams. So they're really bringing in these soluble fibers. But it also shows in the study, in the highlighted area at the top that even as little as 5 grams can make a difference, okay? So to me, that's super helpful, especially with cardiovascular disease. A lot of people want to control their cardiovascular health through diet alone. Maybe they don't want to use a drug. So this would be one way that could be certainly very helpful. So when we look at the soluble and insoluble fibers in foods, I just wanted to give you a list that kind of shows you all the different foods. Don't really get too preoccupied with this. I say just know it's anywhere from 40 to 50%, give and take between the two. But you can see some of them, and I really think, let me just show you this and you can see it for yourself. Okay, apple with the skin. So apple with the skin, total fiber is almost 6 grams. The soluble is 4.2. That's the mushy part in the apple. And the skin is going to be the insoluble. That's the real scraper. That's the scrub brush. That's 1.5. So the apricots dried, same thing. It's about a 50-50. You got 1.8 grams of soluble and 1.7 grams of insoluble with a total fiber of 3.5. So looking at most of the foods, I'm going to pretty much say if you're eating a pretty good balance of fiber, you're going to get pretty much an even amount of both. So when you look at a label, and let's go to a label, and you're seeing on the label that there is fiber, 7 grams, and a lot of labels are not going to break it out for you between insoluble and soluble, but you can pretty much figure on about a 50-50. So that gives you a little leeway to know that if they're seeing a reduction of cholesterols in some of these studies with soluble fibers up around 10 to 20 grams, then that would mean you'd have to eat at least 35 to 40 grams of total fiber. There you go. That's where I'm coming up with the 35 to 40 grams minimum, because I want to make sure that we get enough fiber to do all the benefit the fiber was meant to do for you. So if we continue on, what we have next is, just another little study I bring in. Soluble fiber helps create good bacteria, and it also creates short-chain fatty acids. So that's one of the benefits. Of course, this study kind of says the same thing, how these fibers travel, and they're very important for a lot of beneficial function in the body. And the plant roughage with the insoluble fibers, this is a lot of time with gut issues. We need to create really solid feces. We want to make sure that we're not constipated. We want to make sure we're not having diarrhea. So plant roughage does help form some of that. But if you're not used to a lot of it, right, it could be very impactful as well. So it could actually cause constipation, which is why you want to do a mix of the two, which is wonderful because that's exactly how nature intended. It gave us food that had both. So soluble and insoluble fibers, those are the different types, super important. Now let's get a little bit into the appetite control, because this to me is, we talked about the GLPs. This to me is super interesting, especially with the big rage out there with these drugs that are helping people reduce weight. Because really, honestly, the only way you're really going to reduce body weight in a sustainable way is when you reduce food addiction. It's not about whether it's a vegan or paleo diet. I mean, there are certain health benefits for certain types of diets and the foods that you're eating on those diets. But specifically, when we look at appetite control, the two macronutrients that have the biggest controlling mechanism in them is fiber and actually protein. That's why a lot of times when you eat a diet with fiber and protein, you find you're more satisfied. That's not all there is to the equation, because as a dietitian, if you think you're just going to do a diet of protein and fiber and it's going to work out well for you, it won't. because there's two other macronutrients, carbohydrates and fat. And you got to figure out how those are balanced in the body as well. But this video is talking about fiber, so let's get back on point. So fiber actually works in two different areas to control your appetite. Number one, in a system in the intestinal tract called the incretin system. It's like this little system that creates these peptides, like a hormonal system. And fiber interacts with that system, and so does the short chain fatty acids. And this is the venue that's used to increase more insulin and to go to the brain and attach to the appetite center in the brain. It's through this system. And when you're taking the drugs with the GLPs and their peptides, that's really all they are, you have to shoot them up. You have to inject them because peptides are proteins. And if you were to ingest them, really good chance they're not going to make it through the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. That hydrochloric acid in the stomach will pretty much eat through anything. And it does break down proteins. But remember, this is happening in the intestinal tract, a very alkaline environment. So that's where a lot of our fermentation process takes place with these fibers, and why it's so awesome. Because remember, when the fiber goes through the hydrochloric acid, nothing's happening to the fiber until it gets in the gut. That's where the magic happens. So it's the process in the gut that takes place. Just in case you're wondering if I eat a fiber food with the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, destroy it. No. Magic doesn't happen till it gets into the intestinal tract. So honestly, the thing that really kind of, as a dietitian, obviously I'm peddling the food and trying to teach people that little significant differences in your diet can make major differences in your weight, in your life, in your health. Drugs and fiber can have the same effect on the hypothalamus brain appetite center in the receptor sites. So a lot of these drugs that are these GLP peptides, glucagon-like peptides, actually block the appetite center in the brain, in the hypothalamus, and why people just lose their desire. They're more satisfied. Food is a non-event. Quite honestly, that's usually when you lose weight, is we actually want to try to balance our macronutrients in such a way, which is what I teach in my course. If you go to the Myrna method, which I'll show you at the end of this live stream, that's primarily what I do, is I teach people how to balance these macronutrients to create a system of homeostasis in the body and good health. So the role of dietary fibers and regulating appetite and an overview mechanism in the weight consequences. And this study just basically talks about, again, the fiber fermentation that releases these peptides. That's in the secretin system that I just showed you. And it also creates short chain fatty acids. Both of these chemicals are very instrumental in controlling the appetite center in the brain. And this study in the highlighted area basically says that. It says that a number of mechanical and endocrine signals, which are hormonal signals from the intestinal tract, are stimulated by fibers and their fermentation products. The regions in the brain are involved in the regulation of the appetite, and that's where these can affect these areas and reduce your food intake. And it also talks in the second highlighted area that these also are involved in creating glucagon-like peptides, GLPs. And these are also involved in decreasing hunger and creating more of a satiety event in the brain. So fermentation of fiber in the green highlighted area, I put it in the green so we could really see that right there, black and white. Fermentation of fibers produces short chain fatty acids that stimulate the hormonal cells that also secrete GLP, which are these peptides, and peptide Y that all affect the appetite center in the brain. So it's not just about eating fiber and saying, oh, I feel full on fiber. It must be because I feel more full. No, it's actually chemically induces things that create a more satiety effect through the brain. And this again talks about the control of appetite, energy intake by short-chain fatty acids. And I could just keep going on and on. I always like to show more than one study, so show several. Of course, you could do your own search and you could type in the same thing and type after it PubMed, and you'll see also the same type of research I see. This talks again about the role of short-chain fatty acids. Again, I keep going on and on. So the other, I think, interesting part with the brain and the bacteria in the gut, the relationship, is gut bacteria. I'm not talking about short-chain fatty acids. I'm talking about bacteria in the gut that is used to break down some of the foods. Because remember, when you're eating some of these foods, your body uses bacteria in the gut to help break down some of the foods. Yes, you do have enzymes your body makes, digestive enzymes, but your body also uses bacteria to break down food. And fiber creates its own kind of bacteria, but also certain foods that aren't so good for you, like sugar and fat and too many animal foods, these create bad bacteria. And the relationship with the manipulation of these bacteria and your appetite is interesting because they can change the palate, okay, your desire for food. So this isn't really a satiety issue with the bacteria in your gut, but more of a palate issue, like what you really want to eat. And what this study talks about, if you look in the highlighted area, it talks about, well, we'll look at the bottom highlighted area. It says, in this context, this study reviews the data regarding the role of the gut microbiome in eating behavior and how gut dysbiosis, that means when your gut gets all messed up with bad bacteria, too many of them, can be responsible for a maladaptive behavior, such as food addiction. Because these bad bacteria that are running around in your gut, they want to stay alive. And they literally can travel up through the brainstem and they can increase a palate, a desire for you to want them to eat foods that keep them alive, which is sugar, which is fat, which is a lot of animal foods, not plant foods, those are the good bacteria. So when you eat a lot of these foods, it actually can create a desire for more of those kind of foods. And I see it all the time. A lot of people will say, well, I just don't like vegetables. I just don't like the taste of them. And my next question is, do you eat them? Well, of course I don't eat them. I don't like them. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You got to start eating them, and then you'll start liking them. Sounds a little crazy, but most of us know this is true. Maybe we did a diet several years ago. We forced ourselves to eat salads, and now we love salads, and we didn't like them before. So there's a lot of science behind just eating behavior and how these bacteria can actually hijack your brain to want foods that you really don't want because they are not creating a benefit for you. So a lot of times people will say, well, I just don't have the willpower. And I'm telling you, as a dietitian, I've done the research. It's not about willpower. It's not about you not exercising enough. It's not that you didn't go to the gym 4 days a week instead of 2 or 3 or whatever you're telling yourself. It is a chemical process. When we're looking at obesity, if you lose weight, big deal. You lost weight. You did not fix the root cause of the disease. And as a dietitian, I know this because this is what I do for a living, is I look at the biochemistry of everything. I look at the biochemistry of the body. I look at the biochemistry of food. And I try to bring the relationship together and hopefully bring it together for you. So when I'm looking at overall, I think, this is another study where do gut microbes taste? I don't know if they taste, but they certainly affect your taste. And that's what this study talks about, is how that it can actually, at the highlighted area, the very last sentence, it further discusses how intestinal dysbiosis means when you have more bad bacteria than good, causes conditions that may alter and modulate taste preference and food consumption. Obviously, if you don't like the way something tastes, you're not going to eat it. And that's when it really can change your taste receptor expression, right? So, we got to like what we eat. And a lot of people say, well, I just don't like those kind of foods. Well, you sort of have to grow to like them. So I want to talk about some new diet trends. And I know that a lot of times people are like, oh, elderberries, it's great because, they don't even know why it's great, but everybody's saying it's great, so they're eating it. And they're saying how these elderberries literally are just, people are just losing weight on them. And I'm thinking, I wonder what they have in them that people are losing weight. They swear by it. And they find that when they eat them, they feel better. Well, sure enough, if we look at these elderberries, right there is showing 10 grams of fiber. And that's a lot of fiber. And it shows net carbs. I want to talk about net carbs. All net carbs is they take the carbs and they subtract the fiber and they get net carbs. Okay, first of all, I just want to make it really clear to you. I don't get the net carbs thing because it still has 27 grams of carbs. Okay, what that really means is that the effect of the carbohydrates into the bloodstream will just be a little different. You still get 27 grams of carbs. It's just that you're going to get a more controlled fashion of release, a controlled release of those carbs into the bloodstream, which can be a real benefit. And so then they're calling them net carbs. But what they're saying there is because the fiber is brought into those carbs, you're going to have a less of effect of a lot of carbs in your bloodstream, causing a lot of insulin problems. Well, yeah, that makes sense because I just explained the science on fiber to you and how fiber in itself can help even regulate some of the insulin. Also, my assistant sent something she saw called tadpole water. And I guess, Samantha, there was a big thing about that, right? And a lot of people were doing this. I didn't even know what. The next slide, did I screw that up?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I did it right.
You did.
Okay. Am I on tadpole water?
Yes.
Okay. So what tadpole water is, it's chia seeds. That's it. Chia seeds in water. And these little chia seeds are really high in fiber. And here we go again. So for, I think less than like a tablespoon of chia seeds, you've got 8 or 9 grams of fiber, or maybe that might be 2 tablespoons. Bottom line, that's a lot of fiber, a lot of soluble fiber also in chia seeds. They also have some omega-3, so there's other health benefits.
So people were losing weight.
Yeah, people were losing weight. Thank you, Sam. People were losing weight, and that's the other thing with the elderberries. People were losing weight, and they were feeling great. They don't know why, so they're just going to buy a lot of elderberries and chia seeds. And quite honestly, I want to bring the science to you so you kind of know what you're eating. My biggest favorite phrase is I say, look, it's not what you eat, it's knowing how to eat. That's really the key, knowing how to eat, what food does, and what foods you want to eat to do what food does, right? So I just thought that was interesting. Trend.
Explains the net carbs.
Oh, the next slide, thanks Sam, explains the net carbs. Yeah, and so it's really just a reduction of the fibers from the carbohydrates. So a lot of these will say it's 4 net carbs, okay? And as a dietitian, yeah, there's some benefit in that. Net carbs are better. I'm always telling people, if you're going to eat the carbs, bring the fiber. Because that fiber, not only from a health perspective, right, because I did give you all that, it actually slows down the release of carbohydrates in the bloodstream, which is a huge benefit because then you're going to have a regulation of your blood sugar. There's going to be less insulin release. And I've talked about that almost, I think, every podcast I do, I talk about insulin resistance.
I put in some examples.
Okay. Thanks. Yes.
The trend now is all about the net carbs.
Right.
And not about the fiber.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. So they're all talking about the net carbs because they're just telling you what to eat. They're not telling you how to eat. That's why you're here on the Myrna Method live stream. So here's some examples. Extreme wellness wraps, which I do love those wraps, by the way. And they're high in fiber, and I think they're like, how many net carbs? Did you get, Sam, how many net carbs they say they have?
No, I'm just showing
Yeah, I think it's like, so they'll show you high fiber, and they're showing net carbs because they want you to go look at that. So, 0. It says 0 net carbs. So they must take fiber and subtract out all the carbs on that. Well, anyways.
That's not the point. It's
yeah.
how we're discussing it.
Yeah, the point is, good point, Sam. It's that they're talking about net carbs. Nobody understands that the real hero here is the fiber. And again, it's all about weight loss, and it's not about health. It's not understanding how to eat. It's just what to eat. Another perfect example. So we're seeing 0 net carbs, I guess, everywhere, aren't we? It's kind of like
It's certainly everywhere, but they just see 0 net carbs.
Yeah, and they don't understand exactly what's going on with the fibers, right?
And these are other examples.
Yeah.
Of different wording people do. Keto-friendly.
Keto-friendly, and right, and you're right. And also, people don't even understand that some of these fibers are not, like I think with the Catalina Crunch, well, they're putting so much fiber in everything now because they've figured out, you figured this out. But the key is that you want to get fibers from a lot of different plant sources. That's really key as well because it does have a health benefit. But bottom line, in the Myrna method, my top goal with all my patients is to stop the obesity cycle. It's not about losing weight, but it's about getting to the root cause of obesity, and that's understanding how to eat. Not what to eat, but how to eat. And what we did in this live stream, hopefully, is really nail down one of the major macronutrients, fiber, and how impactful it can be in your diet. Because remember, weight loss does not fix the root cause of obesity. You lose weight, it doesn't mean you'll probably gain it back. If you don't figure out how to eat, you're going to gain it back. You just lost weight. Big deal. And you may not have even lost weight in the right way. I hate to say it, but there's a right way and there's a wrong way. You can't just eliminate certain macronutrients. You can't just say, I'm only going to eat protein. I'm not going to eat any fiber. I'm not going to eat any carbs. You just cannot sit here and just do one macronutrient from a health perspective. Now, you might be able to do it from a weight loss perspective, but it will not be sustainable long term. Sorry, wish it was, but it's not. Because the body doesn't chemically work that way. And food addiction, honestly, is all about these imbalances that you create because you don't understand how protein, fiber, carbs, and fat work, because they have a way of working that creates this homeostasis. So where do you find out more? I'm going to do a little plug here. You can go to myrnathemethod.com for $150 for the entire year. I don't even think I've ever turned that. Have I ever turned that off? I've never even done it. No. You have full access to understanding how these macronutrients work. I do a live stream, unmuted mics on Tuesday. We have meal plans. We have recipes. I have a food coach available. So, and that's all part of that price, by the way, so that you can understand there is a methodology and how to eat to stay your leanest, okay, and to stay your healthiest. All of this truly matters. Okay, let's open up the chat, and we'll let Sam do that.
So here you go. Not much tonight, but just 2 little things to mention.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and I do appreciate it. We've gotten more followers. Thank you. I love doing this. I love serving you, and I love when you like what I do. So if you do, let me know, and subscribe to the channel. Push those likes. Totally appreciate it. And awesome. And we're almost at 600.
We're almost at 600.
Woo! Thank you.
All right.
All right.
So we're all good.
All good.
Till next week.
Till next week.